Howdy folks, Rudrose here, and today we are going to be talking about a special deck tech, which is all about Gargoyles. This was one of my favorite shows growing up, and it absolutely still holds up as an adult. I recently watched it maybe a year or two ago, maybe a little longer. Just, man, what a great show. It's fantastic. I'd highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. So, we have all these new Gargoyle characters added to the game. As you can see, they are over 3 colors, which is Amethyst, Ruby, as well as Steel. And we do get 2 legendaries out of them, both Demona and Goliath, which there's been quite a bit of buzz about these cards. So the list I have opted to build is going to be a red-purple version, or Ruby Amethyst. I'll show you to you here in a minute. Lexington has definitely gotten some buzz as well. He's a pretty good generic answer to evasives, cards like Genie, which is really nice. And I don't dislike Broadway as a bodyguard, but I feel like the Demona and the Bronx are a little more interesting. So the point of this deck, this is definitely a for fun deck. I would be surprised if this is super competitive, but the point is to just experiment with ideas and to really bring the Gargoyles theme to life. Again, there's some of these that are probably not worth it, but I just wanted to really push the Gargoyles theme. There are some off Gargoyle cards too, like David Xanatos and Elisa Maza are some, which they do work with the Gargoyles, although Xanatos is a lot more generic. Elisa specifically works with them. Well, not specifically, sorry. She works with characters with high strength, which is the Gargoyles in general, right? And one of the big benefits of them is that they are all very overstated body-wise. The downside being that they all have this stone by day text, which if you don't know from the show, during the daytime they become stone statues, stone gargoyles, and then they come alive at night. Unfortunately, they don't heal themselves like they would in the show, so that part's been unfortunate. But is that detriment worth the big body? Yes and no. We'll experiment. So go over all the staple stuff really quick. Diablo for card draw, Rafiki just early aggression, Iago just to kind of handle evasives. It's a big body. Also, it's just generically a good card. And then that's it. So this is what's kind of exciting about this deck is that it has so many new cards in it. So first, let's talk about our Gargoyles. Brooklyn. He's evasive. He's a 3/2. I have to admit, in testing, he's been insanely underwhelming. He absolutely should have been a 3/3 minimum, maybe a little more. Because we have cards that do this, right? They're not fully evasive, but we have cards like Jafar and Cruella de Vil, which say during your turn during your turn, this character gains evasive, which is ultimately the same thing. Yes, Brooklyn can technically quest unchallenged by an evasive, but man, the 2 health. I have really felt it in testing, and he's awful, which is unfortunate because this is actually my favorite character from the show. He is the second in command. I really, really like this character, so it's unfortunate that his card is so darn underwhelming. Then we have Bronx. Bronx is kind of like our beater, 6/4. There are times Bronx really, really shines. What's nice is in a challenge, he's pretty much going to take out anything at that level, and even if they challenge into him, he's near guaranteed to wipe it out. Obviously, he's reckless, so he can't quest for lore. As a beater, I like him quite a bit, and this is my girlfriend's favorite character from the show. He's just so cute. For a gargoyle, he's cute. He's basically like the dog of the team. But yeah, he's just solid beater. He's really good at clearing Tiana, and you'll see that in one of our matches. We have 2 copies of Demona, the legendary Demona, which I think everyone's aware of. Play it, exert all opposing characters. Each player has fewer than 3 cards in their hand draws until they have 3. I think this card is both very strong and sometimes feels really bad as well. There are times you just do not want to give them cards in hand, and if you play her, you absolutely will. So I'm not quite sure where Demona falls yet, just because, again, sometimes it's really good. The board-wide exertion is undeniably a strong effect, but there are times you're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to give them cards in hand. So where will she fall at the end of the meta? We're going to find out. This Demona is actually really good, too. She's incredibly overstated, a 4/6 for 4, and she challenges for 2, so she hits for 6, like, so strong. And I love that they have her laser cannon there, too, which she used quite a bit in the show. But she, again, just another beater. And in particular with the Demonas, I am running 2 copies of the Grimorum Arcanorum, which was a mystical spell book from the show. So during your turn, whenever any opposing character becomes exerted, gain 1 lore, and then characters named Demona gain rush. Now, when I evaluated this in my original video, I was incredibly underwhelmed by this because I thought that like say they have 4 characters, Demona comes in, exerts 4 of their characters. I thought you got a single lore off of that. Is that okay? You did a board-wide exertion, but it was 1 exerted effect. You got 1 lore. No, you actually get a lore every time a character is exerted. So if you exert 4 people with Demona, suddenly you gain 4 lore off of that. And you have both of these in play, you gain 8 lore off of that. And that comes up more than you would think, and you'll see it in some of these matches that sometimes she kind of unexpectedly becomes this win condition of, oh, I'm just getting extra lore just by playing her and exerting your characters. And then the rush is quite relevant for this Demona as well as this one, being able to just charge in immediately. I didn't want to play more because, I mean, the effect does technically stack, right? But it's a 3-cost item that does absolutely nothing the turn you play it. So it does feel kind of slow in that aspect, but it's really cool, and it's paid off a bit more than I thought. Junior Woodchuck Guidebook. This is essentially Friends on the Other Side in an item. Very good. Dragonfire, because we just need some spot removal to get rid of some big threats. Hades fills a similar role in that you can't guarantee you'll get rid of the threat, but at least you'll draw cards off of him if they don't. So he's been pretty decent testing so far. Headless Horseman there's still quite a few stuff in the meta he can banish. He's really good against the aggro decks. If they have a Genie and Elsa, there's plenty of stuff with 2 strength or less. And then his board wide bump is like, it's fine. There are times it does really come up and you're grateful to have it, and there's other times it just doesn't really matter or mean anything. Kind of sucks he's uninkable. But back to our Gargoyles. Finishing off, we have Goliath, which says when any of your Gargoyle characters challenge, you gain a lore. So it's kind of like a mini Mushu, not quite Mushu levels, because Mushu got you 2, and you can definitely tell the difference between 1 and 2. However, him just being an overstatted 5/5 is really nice, and it does mean Bronx can kind of turn into a lore generator, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's solid, and he obviously fits the Gargoyle theme. Let me get to Coldstone last. Ursula is just a really, really good quester. I really like playing her on 5, and then the next turn using Elsa or Hades, and then with that 1 extra ink, you boost her, and then you get extra lore and evasive. And the boost, unintentionally, actually has sometimes a very positive effect, and that deals with Coldstone. So what does Coldstone do? When you play this character, if you have 2 or more Gargoyle characters in your discard, you gain 2 lore. This card has felt great and terrible at the same time. If you were to truly try to play a Gargoyle deck, I wonder if you cut this guy. The nice thing is, once you get 2 Gargoyles in there, you just need 2, and he does count himself. Every Coldstone you play is essentially a Merlin goat immediately. Just 2 lore, 2 lore, 2 lore. There's very little stuff to get stuff out. There are very little cards in the game that get things out of your discard. No one's really playing cards like the Queen. So he's just going to be 2 lore for the rest of the game, which is really good, and then he quests for 2. The problem is, sometimes early you don't see the Gargoyles. It's not like there's an overwhelming amount of them. Or sometimes they're the best cards to ink. And so when you draw him early and you don't have the Gargoyles in your discard, he feels terrible. He's worse than a vanilla stat line without his boost, without his lore effect, right? He's 5/4. Yeah, Pooh Honey Wizard has better stats than this guy. And he's uninkable, so there are times I really have come to resent Coldstone, and I just wish he was any other card in the deck. But then there's other times he does get set 2 lore, and it feels like a decent payoff. So is he worth keeping? I'll leave that for you to decide. I was mentioning with the boost with the Ursula, if you boost, this actually happens, I think, in one of the games you'll see, where I boosted, and the card I ended up boosting was a Bronx, and then when the Ursula got banished, it put the Bronx in the discard, so it turned the Coldstone on because I only had 1 other Gargoyle in there. So that was kind of a nice little side effect, but again, you can't obviously count on that. And then finally, Diablo. He's just a decent-sized body on turn 2. I have to admit, I'm a little underwhelmed by this card in relation to how much hype everyone gave it, but he's fine. So here's the deck. How good can a bunch of Gargoyles be together? Let's find out. All right, got several matches here against different style decks. As a reminder, the computer is, take these matches with a grain of salt. The computer doesn't always make the best decisions. Sometimes make outright strange ones. So I cannot guarantee this is going to showcase how incredible or competitive the deck will be, but at least it gives you an idea of how some of these cards work. And it really gives a good example of how Stone by Day works. So with that caveat, we've got our Diablo, going to drop Bronx. He's at 3/3, but these Palace Guards actually having quite a bit of health. They can just go ahead and knock him out real quick. So here you're going to see the biggest quote-unquote issue with this deck. So Bronx goes in, but I have 3 cards in hand, which means Stone by Day kicks in, which means Bronx is not going to ready. And Stone by Day in particular does feel very at odds with the Amethyst card draw. Because the more cards you draw, the more Stone by Day kicks in, and you're going to see a lot of matches here where the opponent, as you can see, there's got to ignore the Bronx because he wasn't able to ready, where the Stone by Day really hurts. And it makes me, I'm not even sure if it's good against aggro, because you need to be able to attack these cards with a card like Bronx over and over again, but without the Stone by Day, or with the Stone by Day kicking in, you're just not able to. But you also need card draw, right? You don't want to pair them with no card draw, and then you're just top decking. You're not going to win the game that way either. Great use of the Horseman there. Get to knock out the Genie, and luckily I've got the heavier Questers on the board, because you can see my opponent's in top deck mode too, whereas I can get a few more cards. But if I were to go, I'm going to hurt myself with the Demona if I do that. But it's like, whatever. I'm just trying to get close to victory here. Horseman, unfortunately, gets taken out by Elsa. He's got such a low body. And here, and I think I've got enough. Yep, and we just dropped Cold Stone for the win. And there, great example of when Cold Stone's actually good. Even though he was junked up my hand early, just like that hand right there. In this particular deck, you're just looking for a 1, 2, 3 curve out. I wouldn't necessarily go in on the Gargoyles one way or the other. Sometimes it is nice if you feel like you can play them early, you are setting them up for your Cold Stone earlier. Oh, I forgot to mention Elsa in the video, that 3-cost Elsa. She's just Maleficent from the first chapter, except with different stats. She's fine. Yeah, I mean, she serves her purpose. Come in, draw a card, and that's it. Use the guidebook. See right there, I wanted to ink the Brooklyn. That was, I thought, the best card to ink in my hand, but now that means I'm not loading up in case I draw into Cold Stone. Well, no worries, we're not drawing into Cold Stone, we're just drawing into a bunch of Iago's. Opponent does opt to get rid of the Genie there. Hades has felt pretty solid in testing. He's at this weird level where he doesn't feel amazing, and maybe that's just the very nature of a card that you can't quite control its outcome. Maybe it'll always have that kind of finicky feel to it as the Horseman comes down and knocks out the Genie. But yeah, it's not that he's felt bad, but he hasn't felt like... Yeah, he's just felt solid. He just feels like a solid card, and maybe that's good enough. Also comes in, cleans up Brother Form. Here, I really like this Ursula, man. If they can't deal with this card, and Steel in particular might have trouble with it, even though they have that new Thunderbolt spell, it only hits for 4, so they still need something else to do with it. They could send Lexington, but again, she has just enough, that 5 health. Most of the stuff that deals with evasive, she seems to get out of it by just 1. I go ahead and hit it with Dragonfire just to get off the field, and Goliath gets me 1 extra lore. And I go ahead and quest out, and you just can't answer a board like this at this point. This match has felt okay against Purple Steel. Sometimes Purple Steel just feels really strong, and it just runs you down. But overall, this has felt pretty good into it. I might keep the Akanorum. Oh, okay, yeah. So we got Demo. Let's see if I can show it off this turn. Not this early, though. Iago, he's another card you could consider. Again, I'm trying to keep with the Gargoyle theme, so I'm trying to keep cards like Brooklyn Bronx, Goliath in there. But Iago seems like a very solid card. Diablo at least can take him out, and even though he opens himself up to the hook. See, now here's an instance I could drop the Brooklyn to try to counter the Mim if the Mim quests out, which most players aren't going to do that, but the computer, this is an example of it, will always just quest out pretty much no matter what. And here, the Brooklyn does get to take the free trade, and I go ahead and establish the Grimorum, even though I don't love... Again, it's a bit slow, but it does really start to pay off. So, like, if I were to Elsa this turn... and see, if I could have Elsa'd, I could have... Now, obviously, the Hades gets rid of the Genie anyway, but Elsa with the Brooklyn, but the Brooklyn isn't readying. He wasn't going to ready again. I have Genie clean up the Rose... And we play the Elsa, and boom, we get 1 lore off the Grimorum. So you don't just have to use the, what's it called? The Demona trigger. It's just any time you exert. So is there some kind of build where you can do even more exert effects? Maybe the 3-drop Elsa that does it repeatedly? I don't know how reliable that is. This seems a little more fun just trying to do these two. But we've got our boosted. I think this might be the match where I boosted the Bronx underneath. And here, so we drop the Demona. We exert the Yzma, which he was going to get 3 cards off of it anyway, so that doesn't feel quite as bad, even though I just gave him a free 3 cards. But with the Rush, he can immediately go in. I get a lore off of it. He does counter. And now, I think that loaded me up for the Cold Stone. And yeah, the Bronx. So it actually threw it in there. So now, okay, finally Cold Stone can come down. That silly card is just rotting in my hand. Elsa comes in, takes out her twin. She could have taken out the Brooklyn, but I think that makes sense. Brooklyn finally gets its back. He trades with the Elsa too. Like, he just feels, compared to all the other gargoyles, he still feels so underwhelming. So now here, if I were to drop this Demona, I could just get 2 lore off of it right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Which I'm nowhere close. But so I just go ahead and opt to get rid of the Iago, get rid of the big challenger. I'm okay if this hook crashes into Cold Stone. I got the big evasive Ursula, which is just putting on this lore pressure. And I have the Demona in my back pocket, too, that, hey, if you put enough stuff out. And here I just let him draw. So, yeah, go ahead. You draw more. I'm not getting rid of my board presence. And play it. Get the floor off the Grimorum. And we win there. All right. I believe this is a different list now. This might be either Blurple or Aggro. What's nice, too, is I do like that I've been able to keep it to 12 Uninkables. Yeah, I think this is the Aggro list. And this is probably the game where I'm going to get run over. So, again, a card like Brooklyn, even the Diablo, I can't... He can only trade into a single Mulan, and then he gets banished. He can't even take the Daisy out. And I actually kind of make a bit of an error here, which is... This is good to show. So, and this isn't even a crazy start, right? They started with some Mulans. So Brooklyn, I put 3 on thinking, well, I'll have Brooklyn finish off the Daisy on the next turn. Except I forget, guess what? Stone by Day is in effect. And as a matter of fact, the Daisy feeds more cards into your hand for more Stone by Day. So even if he hadn't blasted that Brooklyn, it wouldn't have even untapped. Okay, so I can send Bronx in for something. And now he's going to stay stuck sideways. Like, this isn't helpful. This is not helpful having these bodies. It doesn't matter how overstated they are, who aren't going to untap anyway. I don't know why the computer even bothered to take him out. So now I'm pretty much relying on a card like the Horseman. The Horseman is a really nice answer to Tiana, at least. And I get a lore, and like the Goliath in theory should be really helpful against aggro because you can... He's doing what the Mushu does, right? He's helping you keep pace by getting a little lore while you have to challenge everything, which is what you're going to have to do. Problem being, he's stuck. He hasn't untapped. He's just been stuck this whole time. Cold Stone being the only Gargoyle who doesn't have that effect, I just have to play him outright, even without the lore trigger. And now I'm just in this mode where I have to answer everything, and yeah, the dock trigger right there pretty much just seals it. I can Junior Woodchuck Guidebook, but it's just more Cold Stone, and yeah, not enough. So as you can see there, even though, in theory, they should be a good counter to aggro, right? Oh, they're these massive bodies. They can one-shot pretty much nearly every character that your opponent would put down. Goliath can just take out Pluto by himself. Then the problem is, except they don't untap. they stay exerted, especially when your hand is full. Now, to be fair, I think that was going second. Going first, it is a lot easier to dump your hand out, as you'll see here. So if you're able to dump your hand out, then this is a really good reason about why I like Bronx into Tiana. This is the turn 2 Tiana. This is the Aurora Tiana. And Bronx is just waiting to chomp her at the bit. So even though her effect is... She even has resist, and it doesn't matter. Bronx, just pay the 3. Boom, hit her for 6, reduce by 1 to 5. Incredible. That is so good. And I just eliminated this massive threat that my opponent has. So in that case, it's really good. Of course, now the Bronx isn't going to untap. So now I just have to use the Diablo to fight. Luckily, I have the Elsa, and again, was able to get my hand low enough so that Elsa and Diablo can at least hold the board down for the moment, and then Bronx will be back on the next turn. I don't know if I would have challenged there. Might have probably just want to push the pressure. Now here, I was in a good spot. Because of the dock, the opponent actually still had 2 cards in hand, so I didn't just completely fill them up with 3 with the Demona. Normally in aggro, is Demona actually good against aggro? I don't think so. My instinct is to say no, just because, well, hey, she's just going to power them up, right? Like, an aggro player is going to be very grateful if you just put 3 cards into their hand. Cool, I'm just going to go white again. Do something about it. But she's also in this weird spot where she is your card draw. And here's a good example of Goliath where I can use him to keep pace with lore. She's also your card draw, so you kind of have to use her to get your own hand filled. Here we're in a good spot. And yeah, I mean, we were able to stabilize. Cutting off that turn 2 Tiana was quite nice. And Cold Stone for the victory. Very nice. So as you can see, if you can go first and you can kind of mitigate the effects of Stone by Day, a card like Bronx really can put in work against a card like Tiana. It just completely checks it. Wow, look at all these Ravens we got. I hope we just go super wide with Diablos. This is against Blurple. And again, even a card like Basil, turn 1 Basil, and Brooklyn can't attack it without getting banished himself. I just, that 2 health just feels so detrimental as we get a Murder of Crows out there. They're not crows, they're ravens, but I've got Demona if I want to go in on challenging, which I don't have Stone by Day in effect currently, which is quite nice. And I'm set up to do the Ursula next turn. The one thing is, of course, none of these characters can challenge evasives. So I do have to use alternate means to deal with evasive characters. Goes ahead and freezes Demona. So actually, yes, she does have Stone by Day. And I go ahead and boost. I've got double Ursula. Ooh, except opponent real good punish with the bell into the Elsa. That was quite nice. So I actually get to pick her off. And he says, nope, I want to keep the bell around. Okay, well, I'll get to quest. And God, the Ursula is so good at putting on more pressure. So good. And look at that Demona, the 4/6. So that big bell, normally pretty beefy stats as a 4/4, just completely trades with it. Here I exert 2. They only draw 1. I get to draw a full 3. And that's when Demona feels at her absolute best. They drew a single card off of it. I got a full 3 back in hand. And then if you had the Grimorum in hand, you're just going to get that much more lore. So, and speaking of which, Grimorum, I can quest, and then I can just drop. Well, there's nothing to exert, but I can rush in, challenge with that. And actually, yeah, my Demona didn't untap because of Stone by Day, which does make her kind of in a weird spot against the Elsa, because they can Elsa her. She's filled you up to 3, and then make it so she can't unexert. Pretty bad starting hand, other than Brooklyn in the book. We have the double Grimorum Akanorum. Okay, let's see if we can make this work. I remember this match going very poorly, because it's pretty greedy to try to just go in on those books. And here I'm almost like, do I just play the guidebook out? Yeah, I just do, just because my opponent hasn't done anything yet either, and I really just am not valuing Brooklyn. I wonder if there's some way to make him better. So Grimorum number 1 is out here. Coldstone and the Horseman and the Dragonfire, just so many 5 costs in my hand, and the Running Cabal. Iago's a bit of a pain for us to deal with too. But at least we get the easy banish with the Horseman, but then he just gets cleaned up by Elsa. Like, I do like the Horseman, but man, that feels so bad to have an Elsa just come in, knock him out, and still get to stick around. So there, that Demona had Rush, but it doesn't matter because there, I got 2 lore off of Elsa Exertion. That feels really good. Except, of course, the Iago can just counter. Yeah, Iago is really a bit of a pain for this deck. And then once these Hades start coming in, it's like, yeah, I got a lot of ink, but... And this Coldstone is just rotting my hand right now. I can't, like, there's no Gargoyles to trigger. Like, oh, this card. This is one of those matches I hated this card so much. It's like, why? Now, nice thing is when an opponent fills up their hand that much, I can safely play Demona, but she doesn't even exert anything here. She won't even take Hades out if I rush into him, but I kind of don't have a whole lot of choice, or I just play Coldstone out for no effect. And get the double freeze. Yep, goodbye. Now here I can at least rush into the Hades. Draw 3, get double lore off of it. That's nice, at least, from the Elsa. And then I just put Brooklyn out just because I don't have much other choice. And then he just Hades it again. Oh, so many Hades. And see, I'm in this awkward spot where ideally you want to try to dump ink your hand out before you play the Demona so you draw as many cards as possible. But here's where at least, even those, I'm pretty sure this ends up being a losing effort. There's something to these Grimorums, right? This idea of like, I have to, this is the chase. This is what I hate about Lorcana. Look at that. I just double and then I got 4 lore. 4 lore off of that. There's something here. Is it worth building the whole deck around? That I don't know. But there's something here. Referring to the chase is what I'm doing in Lorcana, right? I don't have time to quest. I basically haven't quested once. But I've got half my lore just from the power of these Grimorums, so there really could be something here. Yeah, the big shift, Elsa, that would dull them as well, or exert them. So if you did that on 2 characters, not only have you knocked them out, you got 2 lore from it, or in this case 4 lore. That's pretty darn good. Yeah, and I'm pretty much out of tricks at this point, but still, like, I was able to at least kind of keep pace because of those Grimorums. And that's the list. Link will be in the description below. Let me know what you think about it. Feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you've got any suggestions for this, I would love to hear it. Again, I don't think it's super competitive, but I think there are some cool ideas here, and it is really fun if you just want to play with the Gargoyles. And yeah, let me know if you can come up with anything with the Grimorum idea, because I think there is something there. I just don't know what decks or colors is the best way to use it. So anyway, it's cool to see the Gargoyles in the game. Hope you had as much fun watching as I had playing, and until next time, take care.